everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Deanna and you're watching Orchid. We are repotting a Cattleya and some Cattleya types today, but I thought I'd just start this video out with something a little bit different. I wanted to show you a range of some of my Cattleya types at the moment which are due for a repot, and just my thinking process into why I'm choosing the ones that I'm repotting and why I'm leaving the others. Now firstly, it is the middle of winter at the moment. We've got fairly warm days still, so we're still reaching like 20 degrees during the day, but our minimums are under 10 degrees. They're about 8 degrees Celsius at night at the moment, so it's not the most fantastic time to repot. After I do repot, I do keep my plants inside for a little bit until I'm happy that they're a little bit established in winter. In summer I don't really care, I just keep them outside. But let's have a quick look. This is my Brassavola nodosa, which is not due for a repot. I just repotted a few days ago, but I just wanted to show it to you and show you why I repotted it. The reason it was due for a repot was because it had a lot of algae. It had quite a heavy sphagnum mix, and I got it in May last year, so it's about over a year old now, but it had some fusarium. I cut off quite a few back bulbs and it was left with 3 bulbs. But it's got this little new growth coming out here, so I like repotting when there's new growths that are about 1 inch long, but also if you can see down there, there's a couple of new little root nubbins forming, and that's one of the most recent growths there. So because it's got a new growth and some root nubbins, it was a good time to repot. It's in a much drier mix now. It's in a mix of small and medium pre-mix with bark, charcoal and perlite. That's my usual little mix. I've had this Cattleya Dowiana for a week now. I did make a video which I'll pop up on the screen there. So this is due for a repot because it's in the seller's medium and it is rock. It's super heavy, but also this rock does not retain much in the way of water. However, I do find that species Cattleya tend to be quite finicky in terms of repotting. They're a little bit less forgiving in terms of what media you choose to put it in, and disturbance of its roots and so forth. So it's actually not getting repotted even though it's got a new growth, because this growth is fairly far along. So I prefer to repot when the growths are a little bit smaller, about 1 inch long or so, because they've got a little bit of momentum, and they tend to still grow to a decent size. If I repotted this one now, even if it took well, I would find that this growth would stall a little bit and it'll be much smaller. The other reason is it doesn't have any root nubbins forming at the base of that new pseudobulb yet. So it's the middle of winter, the growth is bigger than I'd like, and also no new roots, so no repotting for that one. Down here we've got this NOID Cattleya that my auntie gave to my mum, and then my mum chucked it in the garden and forgot about it, so of course it got donated to me. So she can't even remember what the flowers look like anyway. It's been in her garden for ages, so this medium is, I don't know what, it's pretty gross. All these roots here are dead, but it does have a few new roots establishing there, and it's got this growth coming out here which is growing at quite a funny angle, so I hope I don't knock it off, but it's a pretty good length. It hasn't started forming its leaves yet, which is another point. So you saw the Dowiana, it already was forming its terminal leaf. So yeah, that one's getting repotted. Next door is this Epidendrum, which I got about a month ago. So that's its biggest growth there. And I think it's starting to form a flower spike at the end of that. Now it's not getting repotted. It's fairly well established in the media that it came in. And I haven't seen any pests. It's a really healthy plant. So I just don't think it needs a repot at the moment. It's the middle of winter. It doesn't have any small new growths coming up and the roots are pretty well established, so I'm going to leave it. However, this Epidendrum is going to get repot. it is forming a flower spike, I believe, up there. This is Epidendrum Topaz, and it's got a little growth forming here, and I think one coming out on the other side as well. But it's basically in this dense algae-filled sphagnum. I just don't like it. So yeah, it's getting repot. So last of all is this little HWK Sogo doll, which is a Cattleya I got along with that little Epidendrum that I am going to repot, but I'm not repotting this because there are absolutely no signs of new growths coming up at the moment. As much as I'm dying to repot it, I just don't think it's a good time to do so. So it'll probably start showing signs of a new growth in spring, I suspect. So yes, no repotting for this one. Alright guys, we'll unpot this one together, the Cattleya. Now, the main thing to be very wary about is obviously that growth. And trust me, I have broken and knocked off my fair share of new growths. So always be very careful. This one is coming out at just the perfect angle to make it very annoying for me. Now I've got some sterilised tools here, and they've been sterilised in this isopropyl alcohol, 70% I believe. Yep. And yeah, let's start. We'll remove all the little stakes first. Now this medium does not look nice at all. It is so soft, this pot. Oh, it comes up really easily. So it's in styrofoam, and I think that's coconut husk. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but can you see that fluid that's coming out when I squish it? That's so gross. Alright, so I'm going to remove all this media. And I'm just having a little feel of these roots in here, but they don't feel too good. And the good thing is that it is so fine that it's quite easy to remove. I'm gently just teasing in between all the roots. Now what is probably going to make my life a bit easier is removing these back bulbs. This has actually been grown from seedling. You see this little dead bulb here with their tiny little bulbs there. And I reckon I could do without those small bulbs. And all the roots attached are almost certainly dead, so let's chop that off. I'll just cut those roots because I've got like crap getting flipped on me. And it's a really nice healthy rhizome there. Can you see that? I'm just going to work my way through these roots, and very soon I'm going to give everything a rinse, and that'll help remove a lot of this stuff between the roots. You can sort of see in there a few little new roots developing. Alright guys, I'm just going to go give this a rinse and I'll be back. Okay, now that most of the media is removed from there, I will start to get rid of these old roots, and I'm going to say for the most part these ones at the back are dead, so I'm just going to fairly ruthlessly just cut off the ones towards the back. You can see in amongst all that there is this nice root with fresh root tips, so I'll be careful not to damage that. I think that's actually growing backwards from one of the front bulbs, but I'm also just having a feel. You can see like this root is actually firm here, but it's lost its velamen on the end there, so I will cut roots like that back to where they're stiff. But you can see a lot of these roots are actually dead. They're very soft. You can see the velamen just comes off very cleanly off them. A lot of these ones in the center, you can see that I can just basically peel the velamen straight off. So all these roots are coming off. There's little root nubbins forming everywhere, and I certainly don't want to damage them, so just got to be cautious. Okay, well it does look like that's all that's left, and this is all the dead tissue, but that's enough. We've got, you can see these roots all have little root nubbins forming, so I think this is quite a vigorous little plant, and it'll be fine. The other thing is, you can see I quite like cutting off a little bit of the old bulbs just to check the rhizome, especially in a nice big plant like this. When there's a lot of dead roots, I just like to check for fusarium or any significant rot through the rhizome. But you can see that's predominantly good tissue. You can see a little bit of blackness down the bottom there. You see that? So that's usually a little bit of, you know, fungal rot. There's obviously a lot of good tissue there still, so I'm not too worried. I'm going to give this a soak in some antifungal solution, and that usually does the trick. Then I just seal that with some cinnamon, and I think it'll be just fine. So the other thing I'm going to do is just peel off some of these old sheaths, but usually if I wet the whole plant, that makes removing these sheaths a lot easier as well. Alright guys, so I have cleaned up the whole plant. All the sheaths have been taken off. The plant's had a good wash. I've cut off some old sheaths as well, and all the leaves have been washed. Cut off some burnt bits, and now I'm going to soak this in some antifungal solution. So this is just some tap water, and I don't use any measuring or anything like that. It's not really rocket science, but this is a systemic fungicide, and the active ingredient is phosphorus acid, and I just put a capful in. Mix it up, and that's all I do. I put it in there for about 20 minutes, half an hour. So in the meantime, I'll unpot the other orchid, and we'll come back and pot this guy up. So I thought I'd just quickly show you guys this epidendrum. It was potted like this. So this is like an old stem, and so that's, I think, originally a keiki off maybe an old stem, and this is a keiki off that keiki. It'd be hard to tell with all these roots flying around, but yeah. So I guess I have a couple of choices, because this is the growth here, and the newest growths are coming out from the base of that growth. But you can see that this stem extends all the way down here. So I can chop it off here. But if I did that, I'd lose these old roots. Now they are old, you can see they're a bit discoloured, but they're actually still firm and they're still functioning. So I might actually keep this whole thing. It actually sort of acts as a bit of a stake, to be honest. So yeah, it'll hold the plant in place, and I might not even have to stake it, because that's all still quite firm. So yeah, I thought I'd just show you guys. Alright guys, well, this plant has been soaking for about an hour now in that antifungal solution. I have sprayed with hydrogen peroxide all through the rhizome and sealed that wound with some cinnamon. So we're good to go. I've got my pot. I've got a 10 centimeter pot here, which should be okay for this plant. I can push most of the plant over to one side, and this growth will be facing the middle. And I've lined with some liquor beads. I use mostly a medium to large bark mix for my Cattleyas. and for this one I am mixing a little bit of sphagnum in too. I do for most of the complex hybrid Cattleyas. I can see that this one is capable of growing quite an extensive root system, so it's going to be quite vigorous, and I anticipate by summer it's going to be quite a thirsty plant with lots of roots, so a little bit of sphagnum doesn't go astray for me in my hot summers. Otherwise I just can't keep up with watering a lot of the time. So not very much sphagnum, it's going to be about maybe 20-25% sphagnum, medium bark mix with a little bit of perlite, and about 50% of some larger Orchiata bark. So I've got some large and extra large pieces here, and I'll give everything a really good mix. Gosh, look at that piece. And I'll mix in the sphagnum as well. Alright, nothing left to do but to pot this guy up, I think. There we go. This older part of the rhizome here is not going to grow any more new roots, so I'm not going to put much in the way of sphagnum on that side. It'll be a lot more heavy on the bark. Okay, and I'm just going to give a really good push with my thumb around the sides. If any of it gets a bit compacted, I just put a bit more bark in. Okay guys, that just about does it. Now it's a little bit loose in the pot just because it didn't have many roots left to rely on, so I am going to stake it. I just attach it to this biggest growth here. Just put a second stake in over here as well, just to make sure that the new growth establishes itself well. I'll just attach it to the previous bulb there. There we go. And we are all done. Alright guys, well here's the finished product. I better hurry this up because I've got two hungry dogs there waiting for dinner. But here's the epidendrum, and it's not in a clear pot because I do find these guys are really thirsty during their growing period, and because they like so much water, there's just problems with algae, so I decided to put this in a coloured pot, and I just staked it up there even though it was pretty secure in there, because as this spike grows it'll probably get a bit heavier. It's in about a 50% sphagnum mix, and the rest of the bark is about half and half small and medium bark mix. So it does look like from here that the pot is probably a bit too big for this orchid, but I have faith that it'll do really well. My experience with epidendrums is that they are very vigorous, they grow extensive root systems into almost anything, so yeah, I think it'll be just fine in there. And here's the Cattleya. Its new growth is growing at a stupid angle there, but as it grows I should be able to train it up a little bit with a little tie or something, but it's very stiff at the moment, so there's no training that for now. But yeah, as it starts to leaf out, I'll just start to get it growing upright. It does seem to possibly have a second direction of growth here. It hasn't grown any new growth, but I did see some available eyes there, so I've left a little bit of room in the end on this side. However, not as much room as I'd like, and I didn't want to use a bigger pot because there aren't too many roots in this orchid, so if it does end up growing anything from this side, I'll just have to pot it up next season. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something out of it, maybe a few tips and tricks. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more orchid videos. I hope you guys have a great week and happy growing until I see you next time. Bye!